Hey everybody, welcome to the weekend. It's Friday.
We are here, guys.
One, just hanging there for those of you that are at work for another few hours, and those of you that are in school for another couple of hours, and it'll be Saturday. Many people are getting ready for the holiday break, so that'll be a wonderful time of rest. So with everybody, we want to welcome you to today's episode of A Blind Guy,
His Wife,
Their Life
Live.
And this is a fun-filled 30-minute show where we introduce you to fabulous people within our network of family and friends and colleagues to help to change the narrative of what it means to be normal, shifting the focus from being disabled to being differently abled, as you see how they've interacted with us in the past, especially me being the blind guy and LaQuita being my wife.
Yeah, so Corey, since you can't see, of course, I will be reading the comments to you because we always have folks in the chat. For example, Philip Waldo Jr. is saying, "Good morning, all. He is here."
Good morning, Philip. And make sure you don't forget to smash the like buttons when you come in. Also subscribe, hit the notification bells, all those wonderful things so that you can know when we have some fabulous content coming up on this channel. So who else is coming in today in the comments so far?
Well, Corey, let's go through the, just let everybody know about today's topics so that they know what to expect today. They will know a little bit about our guest because I'm really excited. I'm just like geeking out, as people would say, but like she's a fabulous person. Both people are pretty amazing. Our musical word on the street, oh my goodness, one of my favorite people in the world. One of the most talented, and then coming in second place is our main guest of the day. I hate to put her in second, but we got a first place person. So go ahead, give it to us, Corey.
So we're gonna have our word on the street today with a musical guest, one of our own Watoto, our oldest Watoto. Watoto means child or children in Swahili, and her name is Brooklyn, 14, great talented on the piano.
We're giving out her information. Just let them know she gets her talents from her mama's side.
She gets her talents, her musical talents from her mother's side. I'll definitely give you that. Right. She gets her good looks from her dad.
Even though she looks just like her mama. So let's hear from the crowd today. No, go ahead, Corey.
We also have a wonderful, fabulous storyteller. World travel. She's internationally known. She's featured as a voice of narration for PBS documentaries.
Oh, Corey, just so you know, I'm going to give them a sneak peek of today's guest. I don't know if they will recognize her from this picture, but for those of them that know her, we will see if they can recognize her from this picture. So Corey, today's guest, I'm just going to give them a sneak peek. She's standing there centered, storyteller from childhood because her father was such an influential factor. He was a storyteller himself, and she is currently chronicling his narratives and documenting all of that. So if anybody recognizes this celebrity, I don't know, you might, but she's our main guest today.
Her name is Miss Charlotte Blake Alston.
You weren't supposed to tell, they were supposed to guess.
Oh, sorry.
Well, it like 3 times.
Yeah, she did say that, but I gave it away. I couldn't hold back because Charlotte is a very special person, a good friend of ours.
We love her.
We love her very much. So we're in for a fabulous journey today, and LaQuita, as always, is going to present to you a plant-based treat that you're sure to enjoy.
Absolutely.
I want you to definitely encourage you to try it when you try the recipe that she's going to provide.
And the point of the plant-based treats, guys, is so that you can get more fruits and vegetables in your life. I love nutrition. I love high nutrition, high quality nutrition, and so plants provide that. So let's jump right in, Corey. Just so you know, we do have more people saying good morning and hello to you all. Fan Britt is saying morning, fam, love and peace.
Fan Britt probably on that 90-second cup of coffee already.
Yeah, she loves her Java. I love it too. So I just got to admit, that's why we're friends. David Hunt is saying good morning.
David Hunt.
Don't start.
Good morning to you.
Corey.
Good morning.
David Hunt is the vocalist, not Corey.
Good morning to you.
David Hunt can sing. Corey can, hold a tune in the bucket. No, Corey's actually a fabulous singer.
I wouldn't say fabulous.
I sing back up, way in the back.
Yeah, in the back.
All right, so let's get on to, before you say too much, let's get on to our 5-minute story time so that we can bring in our musical guest of the day.
Today we have our word on the street, and our word on the street is griot. Griot is a French term that means storyteller or praise singer and musician associated with the West African cultures. But we also use the term Jali. Jali is a term that comes from the Maninke or the Mandinka culture of Mali, the kingdom, historical kingdom of Mali, West Africa.
And it also means the same thing: storyteller, history keeper, praise singer.
So since our musical guest is a Jali, a griot, a storyteller in her own right, our featured guest today, we figured it'd be fitting to bring in a fabulous musical introduction for our word on the street today. And it's none other than a piano virtuoso.
Ooh.
She's at the tender age of 14, but on her first ultrasound, she was seen squeezing her mother's lungs. She was seen pumping her mother's heart. In other words, she was already playing organ.
Ah, playing organs. Go ahead,
And but when she was born, she came with a loud voice, the loudest cry a newborn ever could come with, and was letting us know that she was ready for the world.
Great.
She is a super talented, super beautiful, and we're so proud of our oldest daughter. And in fact, I don't think we tell her that enough, but we're so proud of all the things she does. That's why we wanted to bring her on today as today's special guest for the word on the street.
All right. Hello. How are you?
Good.
And this is our daughter. Tell everybody your name?
My name is Brooklyn.
And we're going to tell everybody your nickname. No, we won't do that to you.
Well, you know, what I want to hear is I want to hear an intro for our guest today because she's a griot, a Jali. She's a storyteller. So if you were, ready for a story, you would, a lot of people think of children. Now, today's storyteller is often at universities, with symphonies and all these important places. But
most people do think of children, and children's stories usually occur in the form of cartoons. I know you're going to say animation, Brooklyn. We called them cartoons back in the day.
Yes.
But they all had a theme song. So give us a theme song from one of your favorite cartoons from when you were growing up.
And just to give you some inspiration, Shine Bright is saying, Grand Rising, everyone. Make sure you smash that like button. And she says, Brooklyn in the building. So you got some encouragement, so let's go for it. Where Brooklyn at? Where Brooklyn at? They're cheering you on. Give us some music. Okay. So just so you know, everybody is loving it. But Lanta Queen says, Aquaba fam, hey Brooklyn. And I think they recognize that Backyardigans tune. Now, Lanta Queen, she has some children, they can dance. Her children are entertainers as well. They're all talented. She's a creative force. Play something for her kids. Hey. Okay, I started singing, so you stop playing now.
Thank you for sparing us for that. Just cut the music. Needle off the record.
Right. Fan Britt says, yes, Bunny, yes. And Belonta Queen is clapping. Philip Waldo Jr. is clapping. And Auntie Sean says, hey, niece, you better play. Shine Bright is applauding you. But we got to get ready. Hey, you know what? Even the musician himself recognized Backyardigans. Yes. David Hunt said, yes. Now, see, David Hunt, he has skills. He plays, he sings, but David Hunt has competition. So go ahead on, Shine Bright, recognize little Einsteins. Go ahead on and give our guest today, Corey, go ahead. You can ask for the next request.
Now, our special guest for today, first and foremost, was born into this world to be a storyteller, a griot woman, a Jali in her own right. But she also does a lot of narration for orchestras and symphonic works. So can you give us something classical, please?
Classical, please.
All right. Brooklyn, you're showing off now. You're trying to let the world know that your mom does give you a lot of musical talent.
Boom.
So smile real pretty so you can show off the state and good look. And before this, I need you to, David Hunt, I need you to help me create a musical track with Brooklyn for this song. When a boy comes to my house for a date, whoop, call the police, he's getting out of here. I'm just kidding. Brooklyn, I'm so proud of you. We're both proud of you. Mother and I love you very much.
Absolutely.
And that was excellent.
So Joanne Fraser Descent says, all right now. Van Britt says, Bunny's got skills. And Shine Bright says, this is lit. Okay.
And lit means, that's a slang word saying that you turn the lights on in your house so people can see. So.
We'll have to use that as a word of the day. Today's word is griot, as for storyteller. So thank you for giving us that storyteller music. We'll have to do lit another day so you can learn how to use it. All right,
Brooklyn.
So great job, Brooklyn. That's what Shine Bright is saying. Philip Waldo Jr. is saying, I remember the first time I played that song on iTunes.
I was there. Where's this lag on?
Right.
So Brooklyn, can you tell everybody goodbye in the Yoruba language of Nigeria, West Africa?
Odabo.
Odabo. Thank you so much. Oh, that was wonderful.
Yeah. And she really does get her musical talents from you because, like I said,
because I forced the piano lessons, I forced the violin lessons.
But not just that, I'm a soul brother with no soul. It takes me I'm a musician. But
I forced the drum lessons.
It takes me a long time to get music, but she picks it up on me like you. So that bridges us right into, our word for the day was griot or jolly, which both mean storyteller, musician, praise singer, and the Jollies are the history keepers of oral tradition in West Africa.
Speaking of oral tradition in West Africa, Corey, here's some oral tradition. Balanta Queen says, Madase, which means thank you, because that's one of our traditional languages.
In Tree in Ghana, West Africa.
Little Balanta Queen said, you go, girl, Brooklyn. I'm going to be in touch. I need a beat. Her daughter is crazy. And Anja Africa also mentioned for Brooklyn, hey, this lady is not only talented, but has great taste. I have the same sweater. Greetings from Sierra Leone. Good to see you in Sierra Leone, Anja Africa. Thank you so much. And awesome job, Brooklyn. Philip Waldo Jr. is saying.
Now, again, the griots, the jollies, the praise singers, the people that are responsible for keeping the culture and history of the people alive through oral traditions and music, that's exactly what they do. And this is exactly what our special guest brings to the table as a professional storyteller. She's traveled around the world doing lots of different things. Now, she's also one of the dopest MCs that has ever graced the stages of any event that we've ever seen. I mean, she's been on stage where she's been in battle raps with Queen Latifah and with MC Light.
This is like a 5-minute story time. Let's make sure we properly talk about this.
And she even took on Nicki Minaj and Lil' Kim and just wiped the stage clean with them, in my imagination. So with that being said, we want to bring to you today's featured guest, storyteller, the griot woman herself, Charlotte Blake Alston.
Hello.
Morning. I was about to say, you're going to have to give Nicki Minaj and Queen Latifah a call to let them know that I beat them in a battle there. So,
well, good morning to you, Charlotte. We're glad to have you on today's show. And we just want to jump right into it. You are a professional storyteller.
People are already welcoming her, Corey. Shine Bright says, welcome, Miss Charlotte.
Thank you.
And but storytelling is just in your blood because it's something that was instilled into you, storytelling and music, from your parents. You want to tell us about that?
Tell us about it, because I have pictures of not just you as a child, but of you as an adult and you with your family. I see you sitting on your dad's lap. I know you were a daddy's girl, and your mom, you look just like your mom. She's center there. So tell us the influence of your parents, because I know that all of you are musicians. Your parents are, your siblings are. Tell us the influence of your mom, your dad, and how you came to be who you are, because everybody's ready for you. we have people saying Akwaba, which means welcome. And then we have Alonta Queen clapping for you. We've got our children saying welcome, and Philip Waldo Jr., welcome, Miss Charlotte. So tell us a little bit about these people in this picture, these influential people.
Thank you. I just wanted to preface it with my own kudos to Brooklyn. And I've been recently going through some old family documents, and I found a program that we did as a family with another family, the Brown family. And the title of the program was Versatility in the Garden. So you clearly have a lot of versatility in your garden there in Virginia. But yes, those seeds were nurtured as you're nurturing those seeds in your children by my parents. My mother was a musician, Carrie, and she played, I think she began studying organ, pipe organ in adolescence. I have an old program from 1925 or somewhere around there where 1935, where it was Young People's Day, and it had Carrie, her maiden name was Collins, Carrie Collins at the console. So she was already playing pipe organ as a teenager in our church. So music was always something that was really important to her. She was also a choral director. So when you turned 6, soon after you learned how to read, that was when you started taking piano lessons. So the piano came to our house. So my mother thought, if you can learn to read letters that represent sounds, put them together, sound them out to make words, you can read notes, put those together to create music. So the music teacher came to our house. So I think half of his income came from the Blake family on Saturdays. Child number 1, okay, child number 2, okay, next, it's your turn, get over here. So everybody started out taking piano lessons. When you got older, if you wanted to, you can choose a different instrument. So my sister down the left was a singer. My brother down below on the left took violin when he was in 7th grade, I believe. The little one sitting on my mom's lap was a percussionist. He also later, when he was in his 20s, learned how to play the Indian sitar as well. And then Alan down there below on the right, Alan and his wife actually have a performance duo they call the Two of Us, and they'll play and perform. So my father, on the other hand, could not carry a tune from the living room to the dining room in a paper bag. So if we did family programs, we asked him to please just move his lips and not make it. He was the one that had a passion for language and literature. And to connect to that with this picture, that was April 25th, 1944.
Your wedding photo.
11 days earlier, my father, one of 3 African-American men who had been selected to train in a class of 103 men to be a radio communication specialist for the Army Air Corps. There was no Air Force at that time. The Air Force is a separate branch of the military, was formed a few years later. But he was selected at a time when the military was segregated to be in that program for that training. And he worked on what my son believes is, for my son Jeffrey's research, a B-29 or B-24 bomber. So he graduated from the course on April 14th, 1994, probably went home on furlough, and 11 days later got married. My brother right there. So Corey, he's in his full uniform, has his in his hand, yes. So with but he's got his wings up there too on his lapel. So a lot of the story about that period of time, I'm taking from the letters that my mother saved that they wrote to each other when my father was in the service.
So now, speaking of your father, I know you said he was in the service, but there was also the influence of your mom. So I'm just going to enlarge this picture because I could have sworn this was you in this photo because I know that both your mom and your dad were just amazing forces in your life. And, our audience, they can just tell, the type of person you are. They're like an humble human being. Yaya Bey is saying, Akwaba, welcome everyone. So he's welcoming you here. Our children are giving you hearts and smiles, blessings and more to us, Corey, from Yaya Bey, just so you know.
Yaya Bey, Ethiopian Air, baby.
That's an inside joke, Charlotte. They want to fly Ethiopian Air. Anyways, and Issa Pritchett, he's also a storyteller. Corey and LaQuita, outdoing yourself today, none better than Charlotte Blake Alston. So a lot of us know you, but you can finish telling us about your parents, because this is the interesting part. Like,
and especially your father's influence. I know you said he had an ear for language and words, and basically was a spoken word artist himself. So
yeah.
the collective influence of them, how did that pan out for you professionally?
Absolutely. So the image that is on the screen right now is a picture of my mother in City Council chambers in Philadelphia in 1957. She was elected as Philadelphia's Mother of the Year, and I still have an article from one of the papers that says Negro wins Mother of the Year. It's like, Negroes are mothers too. What would I think of next? Years later, that we found out that my father had written a letter to this committee about all the things that my mother had done, all the activities that she was involved in. So I have his rough draft that he wrote in longhand, and then I have the typewritten letter that he wrote about my mom's activities. So there's even a connection to this award and my father and my father's writing. So he was a musician. He was a mailman, a letter carrier. And that's another story, because he was more than that to his clients. The one time he was sick in 30 years, so many people called the post office to find out what happened to him that they gave out our phone number. But always carve out time, something that I need to do. He would always carve out time to write. And after the dinner dishes were washed, after he'd watched the news on TV, read the paper, that was his ritual, he would head upstairs into my parents' bedroom and close the door so that he could have some quiet time away from 5 kids and a wife so that he could write. Daddy's
Amen.
I would go in the room. I would open the door really quietly because I knew that was his quiet time. I would close the door. I would just sit on the floor just to be in his presence. Sometimes I would take a book. Sometimes I would just sit there just to be in his space. And he'd be on the bed. He'd be propped up on pillows. His legs were bent. His thighs were his desk. There were papers and books around. And he'd be reading and writing. And I was maybe about 6 years old. Over time, he began reading out loud some of what he was reading. So early on, I heard the work, the language of Langston Hughes, Gwendolyn Brooks, James Baldwin. He would read passages of literature and say, "What do you think about that, Joe?" He called everybody Joe. And then around 6 years old, he handed me, and I don't bring this book generally now stays in plastic, but handed me the complete poems of Paul Laurence Dunbar.
Oh, so the book that you have in your hand, show it to us again.
Complete poems of Paul Laurence Dunbar. And Paul Laurence Dunbar is best known for the work wrote in what is referred to as Negro or African American dialect, although he wrote in a variety of poetic forms and structures. Maya Angelou named her first book, her autobiography, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. That came from Dunbar's poem, Sympathy. So he writes in a lot of forms, but he selected a poem for me to read. I read it over and over and over again. And it was a dialect poem. I had no trouble reading the dialect. It wasn't the kind of exaggerated spellings of Joel Chandler Harris, who wrote the Uncle Remus stories. This is a representation of an oral language. So how do you represent that in spelling? So you have to make choice. So how do you say churn? How do you spell churn? Chilren, Chillun. But Dunbar's spellings was a more, to me, dignified and respectful representation of the way that African Americans spoke during the time of slavery. It was basically a merger of their indigenous languages, their articulation patterns, and that met with English. And they applied some of those patterns. So you can, if you hear someone who comes from France and they are speaking English, it still sounds like they might be speaking French. Or someone who comes from an Indian country, they still articulate the same way. But those are regarded as romantic or exotic. When it came to African people applying their articulation patterns, then that meant that they were backward or stupid or uncivilized. But Dunbar gave dignity to people in his work. So I read this poem over and over, even in my mind, as I looked at the words on the page and the phrasing, I heard the language, the melody, the rhythm, and the articulation pattern of my great aunts and uncles from Southern. There was a other side. There was Tappahannock, King and Queen, Essex County. So I read this one poem over and over in the morning, memorized it. And when my father saw how quickly I memorized the poem, I think a light bulb went on. And then he would write these monologues for me to do.
So, you know, with these monologues, I'm going to also show a picture of you standing in front of an audience. I just want you to know that, of course, you're a storyteller. And so Shine Bright says, such a beautiful story, so much Black history. I mean, the way you flow with the information is just wonderful. Miss Sheila Arnold says, I have that book. It was given to me by my mother. So cool to have these gifts from our parents. Pam Britt also says it's bringing back memories of her grandmother. Paul Lawrence Dunbar was her favorite. Joanne Fraser Descent says every household should have a copy of this book in their library. And of course, excellent explanation about the dialect. And ever the scholar, Charlotte.
Yeah, and you do a lot of great scholarly work. And being an educator is part of what it means to be a storyteller such as yourself. So tell everybody about where this is taking you, you know, from being a storyteller at national festivals, international festivals, even to being a librettist. And
she can start at this picture because we have a couple of pictures here of her. You know, where did you go from here? Tell us about this picture, and then we want to hear more. Let me put this in. All right, this one right here.
So that was maybe 9 or 10 years old. I know exactly what I am saying there. That is the ending of one of the pieces that my dad wrote for me, one of the comedic monologues called Baby Brothers. It's like what it means to have brothers, and then a new one coming into the house. And it ended with a poem and about a twiddler, a person called a twiddler. And that's someone who, as soon as you get settled in watching TV, he switches the channel on you. And that's what brother. It said the only thing for dad to do with such a twiddly pest is grab him firmly by the ear. And my dad coached me on movements and all of that. Is grab him firmly by the ear and twiddle him to bed. And that was my exit. That's when I would walk off, and that was the end of it. So that's how I know exactly what I'm doing. And even the other one, these are 2 photos. Each of them were taken on a Polaroid camera. They both got pulled off a little bit too soon. So that one's got a little more streaks in it. So that's just, I'm doing that same piece about Baby Brothers. Just, I was thinking, maybe, if, at that time it was Nikita Khrushchev who was sending a man to the moon. And I thought, well, maybe I could put my little brother in a Sputnik and send him up to outer space. So all of that was from the coaching that my dad gave to me. I remember one time there was no microphone, and the event was taking place like in a big space, like a gymnasium. And I think I was like 10 or 11. And the sound was just bouncing all over the place. So in my child mind, I thought, well, I don't really need to speak loud because the sound is just going to echo.
Right.
And then when I went to sit down, he looked at me and said, "You stink." He said, "Couldn't you tell that nobody except the people on the front row were laughing?" So,
oh my goodness.
So I never underestimated that again. It's like you always speak to the person who's farthest away from you. So that's a lesson that I learned even as a child.
Right. And, so now I'm showing this adult picture of you because, like you're saying, you learned as a child what to do, how to do it. You're holding a kora here. I know that's one of your later instruments that you learned to play, because as a child, you started with piano. And then what age did you start playing the kora?
Well, I played piano when I decided I didn't want to play piano anymore around 6th grade. And I was a dancer at that point. And that was what I wanted to do when I got out of high school, was go to New York and sit at the feet of Alvin Ailey. And it was really, I came through the 60s. I was in college in the 60s. When we took over the campus in 1968, I was at a black college where we didn't have black courses. We were demanding to have courses in history. So I came through all of that. So when I started teaching, I was reading a lot to my kids. I taught for over 20 years. And I had kindergarten. I had this one little girl one year, little Miss Nancy, who wanted me to read the same story like every day, like 50 times. And I finally said, I think we know this story. I don't think we need the book. So why don't we just tell the story to each other? So informally, that was sort of the first time that I told the story, and their reactions were different from the reaction they had if I was just holding the book up and showing them the illustrations. So that's sort of where my interest got piqued about, and I started telling more stories and reading the stories in my classroom. But then I went to see a storyteller. No, I did a story at school at an assembly program. So I taught in an independent pre-K through 12 independent school. I did a program at the lower school assembly, and everybody went nuts. And I thought, what is the big deal? And I went to hear a storyteller, and just with his voice, he just transported us out of the space we were in, and I understood its power. So given my background, I began researching African story traditions, African American story traditions. And that's when I uncovered what we never learn about. And that is there is a hundreds-year-old rich tradition of the transmission of oral history. The first documentation of the instrument you're going to see later was done 800 years ago by explorer Ibn Battuta. So Ibn Battuta came down, first he explored in the northern part of the continent, then came to the west, came to the kingdom of Mali, and was in the court, and he was entertained by these musicians, and he wrote about it. So we know that if he saw the instruments and the tradition 800 years ago, they were playing long before he got there. So I began mining the stories that came out of our tradition. Initially, it was almost all African folk tales. So I started mining those, or doing stories. The head of my lower school, actually, she always said later she felt responsible for me leaving teaching and being a storyteller. But she released time to run off to another friend's school in the morning, do a quick assembly, and then run back. I had an assistant in my classroom. But then the word began to spread, and I was getting invitations in larger venues. But, you know, because we get so much misinformation, mythology that gets perpetuated. I mean, people still talk about Africa like it's a country. And today, if they're talking about something that happened in Paris, they will say the city, sometimes even the area of the city. They don't say in Europe today, or in Ireland, there's white on white violence. You know, we still perpetuate that mythology that Africa is a country, it's a homogeneous place, everybody's the same, everybody speaks African. And they were sitting around waiting for colonizers to come to teach them how to live their lives. So we need to counter that lie. We need to counter that misinformation, because I sometimes hear African-American storytellers repeating the misinformation. So it's time for us to do the research and do the homework and represent our history and our traditions accurately with dignity.
So let me ask you this. When you say to represent them, I know that on your website, you know, you have several pictures here of you in front of different audiences. However, you yourself have been to the continent of Africa. Tell us about the countries that you've gone to and visited there in Africa. There you are with the Kora, you know, I see. And so how many times or what countries have you visited in Africa that have helped you to form a story and form a true story about the different countries, the different regions in those countries that you visited, rather than looking at the continent as one narrative, you know, one situation?
Senegal, which I think still is my favorite. Maybe it's because the first country that I visited. Because I do not speak, you know, fluent French. I know enough Wolof to get by to say hello, thank you. Senegal, Gambia, Ghana, South Africa. So I have not. My brother had an opportunity to go to Kenya and Uganda, but West and then South Africa. But you know, anything else, I would have to say, you know, most of the time, if we're seeing some program that's produced about the continent, it's focused on animals. Well, I found, and everybody else are natives. But I found the people to be so warm and welcoming. And if you actually take the time, like we do if we visit France or Italy, to learn a few phrases in their language, if you take the time to learn some words, some phrases, some greetings in their indigenous language, you just open up, my sister, you know, open up a whole new world. The fact that you've actually taken the time to do that. But I just
Well,
people very open and warm and welcoming and helpful.
right. We have Joanne Fraser Descent saying Ghana and South Africa. Yes. And Zenobia Ridley is in Ghana right now. She's saying, hey to my favorite family and greetings to our guests. I am still enjoying my beautiful motherland. You know, we have Miss Sheila Arnold saying this, what a great interview and what a great show. And we have our final question, Charlotte. Did your father ever compile his writings? So you can bring us in, you can bring us your Cora, because we'd love to see that if you have it handy. And, you know, and then you can also let us know about your father compiling his writings. I know that with the accent that you shared earlier, it has also taken you into so many other places as far as you've done so many narratives for
PBS.
For PBS.
You've done documentaries for Healthline, not Healthline.
Yes,
Global Health Media, that's on the screen now.
And you've also done a lot of work with different narrations, like for Scheherazade, for the different symphonies and orchestras. So you've done a lot of work as a orchestral narrator, a documentary narrator, training film narrator. So you have that lovely voice going on. So we want to get a demonstration of how that works with the Cora.
Often I still approach, even if it's narration, I still approach it as a storyteller. Someone once I worked with, there's an opera company here called Opera North. It used to be Opera Ebony, which gave a platform and a stage to people of color, singers of color, to perform major operas. So they had done a stage version of an opera called Vanquis. And the feedback was that the narration was kind of clinical and academic. So they asked if I could recraft it. And so I heard from the director, I'm not going to call his name, I don't know if he's one, we got a project where we were working. And he said, you know, I told him what I was doing, the direction I was headed. He said, you know, I just need, you know, the dates. And I said, you know, that's not what is, you know, people remember. What people will take away is what hits them in the heart. So the piece opens with the choir, with the chorus, chanting the names of slave ships in alphabetical order. And the image that came to my mind was when we had to get off the bus so the bus could go across the bridge, and then we got back on because it would have been too much weight. But we were by the river Asin Manso in Ghana. And the young Ashanti gentleman who was with us, one of our guides, told us that this was the last place, and I don't want to forget what I call him Reverend Pritchett. I don't want to forget Reverend Pritchett's question, but it was the last place that people had to bathe before they were walked down to Cape Coast to the slave ship. And that's the image that was in my mind. You know, it was overland they walked, you know, the Wolof, the Sarah, the label chained together. And I said, let me read you what I have. And I read him the opening line and he said, oh, I'm getting chills. I said, I rest my case. I'm like, leave me alone. So I approach it all as storytelling, as bringing the text to life, bringing the narration to life. If it's a libretto, and a libretto is when you write something that's going to be sung, it's how do you bring the story to life so that when the choir sings it, then the story is brought to life for that audience. So Dylan, the answer to the question is it's a timely question, because a couple of years ago, when I turned 70, I realized I was the age that my father was when he left the planet, and a huge wave of guilt washed over me. I realized that I had let 30 years go by of putting aside, you know, I'll get to it. When my father died, I went into the house, into their bedroom. I took out everything that had his handwriting on it. That's how I ended up with the letters. My father wrote short stories, essays, plays. He had a play produced on the radio in the 1950s.
Wow.
He had a newspaper column in our community newspaper in South Philadelphia. We lived in a section called Point Breeze. His column was breezing around. The letter about my mother's activity that ended up with her getting that Mother of the Year award. So I did start documenting. I've typed up a lot of his stories. He was also writing 2 novels. And And unfortunately, a lot of them, the pages are kind of frayed at the edges. Some of them are written longhand in ink and bled over on the other side. But as much of it as I can put together, my writing group even offered to have them read some of his work for feedback. So I have drafts of his work. So I do what I call a daughter's cut, and it incorporates all of the edits that he had in his drafts. So I'm trying to do that now. What happens always is I end up getting projects, and once again, they go on back burner. But the sands are, moving a little swiftly through my own life hourglass. So this next writing project, I'm making an announcement. I told my friend to write it down because she says it means nothing to her because I always, not follow it. Said I'm not taking major writing projects in 2021. That has to be the top of my list right now. Is getting down.
Yes, and that you always have resources. So use all of your resources that you have. If you need help from Corey and I, our pool of resources, absolutely. We always are a family here. So
you've been a major influence on us. We have our prop here. You told a story. One of the first stories I ever heard you tell was a story about a snake, a mythical, magical snake called Yangarachena. And so I asked you for permission to use that story, and we created a play script out of it that featured this version of Yangarachena. And the funny thing about it is you tried to teach me the song, but all I got was Yangarachena. So I had to make my own verses up. So, and again, when we saw you, you were playing the chorus. So can you give us a demo? And we use this in one of our Kwanzaa shows, our Harambe for the Holidays show called Tales of the Twisted Stick.
Definitely. So guys, if you see scrolling at the bottom there, information about that live show, the information is there for you to partner with us and also to watch the live stream on the day after Christmas. We've been hosting this every year for years now. And speaking of years, Corey, LaShawna Brooks says 70 where? Miss Shauna is fly, awesome and inspiring story. A Daughter's Cut sounds like a book to me, is what Joanne Fraser DeSantis is saying. So I'm going to give you the screen so that you can give us a sample of the chorus. Show us what you got.
Okay, and that's
wait, I forgot. You also didn't answer my earlier question. When did you start playing the chorus? So I'll give you the screen so that everyone can hear and see you.
So I have to say that story. I love that story that you referenced that your kids are doing now in your organization, because in the end of that story, it's the children who come together in the end so that things turn out all right for that chief. So what I say to children, if I'm in front of them in an elementary school, is that, little boys begin learning this from their fathers, their grandfathers, their uncles, when they're 5, 6, or 7 years old. So when I started, I was 10 plus 13 plus 2 plus
50.
Okay, so I'm gonna jump in and I'm gonna add up those numbers for you.
50.
Because we got people out here that are saying, awesome interview, Black excellent. When I was 70, come on now, looking fine as African wine. And then, Philip Waldo, that was ex-DMC, correct?
Ex-DMC, right.
And Philip Waldo Jr. saying, maybe she was born in 1970. We just, maybe that's the 70s she was talking about. So I'm going to give the answer. You told us that you started playing when you were 50.
50 years.
Wow, that's beautiful.
So it's mainly, let me just give you the information about it. It's the instrument that is used primarily by the griots, by the jalis. By the way, the female word that is jali muso. Muso means woman in Wolof and in Mandinka, but it is a male tradition. It's passed down in families. So if you hear the surnames Sissoko, Suso, Jabate, Kuyate, those are the griot families when you hear those surnames. So you're born into, or you marry into a griot family, and you begin learning from your father, your grandfather, your uncle when you are a little boy. So I had to ask when I made the decision to learn to take lessons. I first heard it when I was in Dakar in Senegal back in 1988. And I was chaperoning teenagers actually, and we were all chatting at a restaurant outside. And this young man sat down with this instrument and started plucking its strings, and everybody went silent. It was like listening to the songs of an angel or something. So it's made out of a gourd that's cut in half, hollowed out. Across the opening is animal hide, either cow hide or goat skin. This is more contemporary because it has pegs. The traditional chorus are ring chorus. So each string is wrapped around it, a strip of hide. As you can see, it has a pretty long neck. Here we are. The kora has 21 strings. There are 11 strings on one side, 10 strings on the other side. And for all of those strings, all you get to use is your first finger and your thumb on each hand because your other fingers have to grip the handles. So you hold the handle and then you release your first finger and your thumb in front of the handle so that you can reach the strings. But what you're doing on one side is different from what you're doing on the other side. So it's a lot like trying to rub your stomach and pat your head at the same time, and then you have to talk and chew gum and walk backwards and sing in another language at the same time. But yes, I had to ask if being female and being American would be an issue. And my first teacher, the late, great, humble, incredible Jimo Kuyate, said to me, "What matters is if you are serious." So I was serious. I got in my car and drove 3 hours from Philadelphia to Washington, D.C. Took my little cassette tape, my cassette tape player, because by the time I got back home, I couldn't remember what we had just done. I had to listen to it again. But Jimo Kuyate was just a wonderful person. When someone takes you on as a student, you become part of their family. So I became part of that Kuyate family. I don't bear the Kuyate name, but he will forever be my Kora father. After he passed, I didn't study for a long time, a couple years. I think I was grieving, and I knew that if I studied with someone else, he was from Senegal, that the approach would be different. And at my age, the synapses don't connect so fast. But eventually I connected with Yakuba Sissoko, someone I worked with in New York at Carnegie Hall, and he agreed to continue my lessons for me. So I drove up to New York back and forth for a couple years, but I was approaching 70 then. I was getting a little tired. But anyway, what I say is I will never master the instrument. I started a little late, but I always try to represent it with authenticity, with truth. And I always say when I play, I try not to embarrass my teacher, essentially. So that's sort of the story of the kora. So it is.
That's great. And for those that, if I'm not mistaken, your first teacher, Kuate, that means he's a descendant of the great Bala Faseke, who's the Jali of Sanjata Akita, first emperor of Mali.
Right, and they're the descendants who play kora and the descendants who play balafon.
That's right. So, Corey and I are storytellers, and this has been part of our historical just learning as far as so that we can teach others. And so in our professional lives, we teach these things, and this is why we love bringing people like you on, because it's such a great conversation. The time flies so fast. Fan Britt says, "What an amazing 30 minutes, time well spent." Thank you, Miss Charlotte. Big ups, Corey and LaQuita. Thank you as well, Corey. I'm just going, dust it off over here.
So Charlotte, like I said, you're such an amazing person. We have to have you back because there's so many layers to what you do professionally, personally, and so many projects that you're working on right now that we would need an actual probably another 70 years just to discuss it all. So, but we want to thank you for coming on today, and we definitely want to make sure that everyone knows how you can check out Miss Charlotte Blake Alston on her website, which is?
It's CharlotteBlakeAlston.com.
ALSTON, not like.
Say that again, please.
ALSTON, not like Texas, not AUN, not Austin like Austin, Texas. AL.
Right. So let me make sure that everyone can see this. So that that's not what they want to see. They want to see the correct spelling. CharlotteBlakeAlston.com. And so that's the site where we were earlier, where people could see. We know that with your site is still relevant. There's still wonderful pictures and information there. And so once people go there, they will see your face. They will know they're at the right place. They can learn more about you. And they can also, if we have any places that are looking to book you, your booking information is there as well. We got the private contact, we got the personal hookup. They can't just call you or email you like we can. So we're not going to share that information.
All I got to do is call on the phone and say, dun 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 dun. And she said, hey, Corey, how you doing? That's a little inside joke. But Charlotte, we're going to go ahead and put you backstage because we got to make sure these people, I'm pretty sure it's getting close to lunchtime. They're hungry. I'm pretty sure they're ready to see what you got.
They are. So just so that you know, Charlotte, we want you to know how everyone feels today. Ms. Sheila Arnold says, wonderful interview. Awesome.
That's a storyteller in her own right down there in Virginia.
Absolutely. Sheila is a storyteller and we work with her. Oh my goodness. There are so many fabulous people today in the chat. Joanne Fraser Descent says, excellent. Thank you. Fan Britt says, that's just beautiful. When you were playing the kora, it's just so melodic. And then Bliss B is saying, Corey, looking healthy.
Thank you.
After being in the hospital for a week, looking good. Bliss B is a storyteller. Well, Bliss B reads books so that if you have a book that you're wondering, how am I going to get through it? You go to her channel. She has a podcast or a YouTube channel. You just listen. So she's going to watch their playback. Now, we got Belanta Queen saying that was an amazing story. African Fly. Thank you from Philip Waldo Jr. And Dylan is saying, stay safe, well, and continue blessing so you continue the awesome work.
Who's going to tell it if a teller don't tell it? If a teller don't tell it, then it might not get told.
That's Aesop Pritchett. Yes, he always says that. So you have to keep telling these stories. Yaya Bay says it was truly an honor. All three of you, he's excited. Dylan Pritchett is excited for us. And Bliss B says website noted. So we also have the savvy African entrepreneur and investor, Chelsea. Morning, family. She's just gotten back home from Ghana, actually. So everyone has been so excited to experience you today. So we are going to have you back.
I was talking about, thanks for inviting me. And yes, please embrace your culture, embrace your traditions, embrace your history, do the homework so that we can counter the negative narrative.
Absolutely. Thanks again,
Charlotte, for all your wonderful work and for coming on today. Thank you very much.
All right. Guys, that was just beautiful. Corey, I think we are right here ready for something good. We want to move on to the next step so we can finish this thing up. What do you say?
It is time for today's plant-based treat.
All right, guys, we're trying to get you into eating more fruits and vegetables. So here it is. I've added the 2 tablespoons of sugar. I've also added the teaspoon of salt. Add the butter. I've melted my butter. I'm going to add it in.
Plant butter is a dairy-free and gluten-free butter made with plant-based oils from olives, avocados, and almonds. By the way, this is just 2 sweet potatoes.
These liquids help the sweet potato to get really smooth, and it blends the flavors evenly for what I'm putting in. I use my hand mixer so that the skin of the sweet potatoes is completely blended because that's where a lot of the nutrients are.
Sweet potato skins are safe to eat. They're rich in fiber, vitamins A, C, and E, plus antioxidants that help prevent chronic disease.
Go ahead and add my buttermilk and then I'll blend that. So I've got a lemon. I just cut it in half. And I am going to create buttermilk by adding the lemon juice. Here we go. I'm going to add 3 cups of flour. So that's my first cup. I'm going to add a couple more, and then I'm also going to add a tablespoon of baking powder. Here it is, all mixed up. You take the batter, you take a big heaping spoonful, and you drop it right onto the pan.
Bake at 375 for 8 to 10 minutes. You'll smell them when they're done.
I liked these. These were really good. I like how they were kind of crunchy on the outside, but smooth and creamy on the inside.
Okay.
So those were sweet potato biscuits. So you got holiday parties you're going to, or you just want to have something delicious for yourself at home.
It's that time
of the year. Sweet potato biscuits, they're excellent, and free of any animal products. that could cause you any health concerns and health issues.
Bliss B has all of her food pictures. She's like, yes, she was ready for it. And the savvy African entrepreneur and investor says, I love the plant-based segments. Guys, we love you too. We really enjoyed you all. We've enjoyed our guest today.
And we want to actually, again, encourage you to partner with us so that we can continue to change the narrative of normal through our channel, through our special projects that we're working on within the community. And they can do that by...
Well, guys, you can always partner with us. We have our Cash App here. We have our, with our Cash App, I'll just make sure you all can see everything here. Our Cash App or our Patreon, it all goes to our nonprofit organization, Atumpan, a 501c3 nonprofit. Make sure you're there for the live stream, December 26, 2020. You can find the event on Eventbrite. You can always find it on atumpanedutainment.com. There's a couple of different places you can find it. Either way, it'll be aired right here on Blind Guy, His Wife, Their Life, the day after Christmas, which is the first day of Kwanzaa.
So thank you for joining us on this episode of A Blind Guy,
His Wife,
Their Life. Join us each Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of the week as we welcome you towards the weekend with fun and fascinating stories that change the narrative of what it means to be normal, shifting the focus from disabled to being differently able. Next week is a very special week. Next Wednesday's episode is going to be about my birthday, December 23rd.
December 23rd. It's coming.
It's coming quick. So thank you very much for joining us. And I'll give another shout out to Mr. Pritchett. Who's going to tell it if a teller don't tell it? If a teller don't tell it, then it might not get told. Deuces.